If you have not been part of one of these webinars before, my name is Matt Ayers. I am kind of the all things training when it comes to Quotient. Altogether, about 17 years of sales experience. Some of that actually selling the Quotient product, and some of that actually working in the insurance field. So about 4 years in insurance. Bunch of other kind of different sales stuff in and around that, a lot of outside sales, kind of door-to-door stuff. But enough about me. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of dive into our webinar here. So what we're really going to focus on today is, talking about the post OEP and AEP. I know that if you're currently in the Medicare world, there's still a pretty busy time going on now until about the end of March. But what we're really going to focus on is kind of that fourth quarter of last year. What went well, what didn't, and just kind of focus on, hey, how do we start the year off right as a result? What can we take from that, and how can we advance ourselves into 2020 here? So just kind of our agenda, like I'm kind of explaining here, we're going to talk a little bit about the recap of OEP or AEP, most importantly, the fourth quarter of 2019. We're going to talk about our phone prospecting checklist. I think it's a really, really valuable tool that's going to help everybody out. Kind of gives you a roadmap or maybe a way to set things up for success as that were. And then we're going to talk a little bit about client onboarding. So often we talk about, products, we talk about what we as agents do, but we're going to talk about maybe more of the client experience and how you can better that and essentially help yourself down the road. So first and foremost, how many of us felt like this coming into the first of the year? You just charge so hard. Every agent that I talked to basically from September on, they were in full on, getting certifications done, getting ramped up, sending out their emails, getting just ready for the busy time of the year. And feeling like this in January, that's not the end of the world, because that means you probably put in a lot of work, and hopefully, is a very lucrative season for you. If you've got a pen and paper, if you've got any way to pull something out and kind of write down, I strongly urge you to do so. So go ahead, and if you would, maybe grab a piece of paper and just draw a line down the middle. And on the left-hand side, just title that, what went well. And then on the right-hand side, we're going to title that what didn't go well. And now I'm not going to ask you to share. so this isn't going to be a pop quiz or anything like that. But just in an effort to kind of get used to writing some things down and kind of looking at analyzing yourself, just write a couple things down in each one of those columns. And this is something that you can definitely come back to and work up a little bit more comprehensively, this afternoon or this weekend, or whenever you kind of have some more time. But a big part of this is essentially recognizing what you did well and what your strengths are, and maybe recognizing what you could have used a little bit more help with. And that doesn't mean that you're a poor agent or anything like that. It just means that we're going to identify what didn't go well and maybe figure out how to fix those things when it's all said and done. So moving forward here, kind of the three attributes as I have got them labeled during our really, really busy time. This probably can be, over the entire year, but most importantly in that really, really busy time, again, that fourth quarter, I feel it really comes down to three things. The busy time of the year is time, of course. How much time do you have? How much time can you spend? And then leads. How many leads are you able to work? And did you run out? And then the last one is going to be product offering. So if we take these three things into consideration and you kind of think about, basically what went on over the last 90 days or so, I want you to be so kind and maybe take a look and participate in our poll here. So what would have helped more? Would you have been better off with more leads? Would you have been better off with more time? Or kind of some better resources? So like maybe a better product offering, things of that nature. So why don't you go ahead and we'll give you about 30 seconds here. Let everybody get in there and kind of put their response in, and we'll use this as we kind of move forward here. So far, leads far and away the early leader, which I kind of anticipated they would be. Surprisingly enough, more time is towards the bottom of the list. Looks like we got about half of our folks participating here. We'll give it about another 10 or 15 seconds here. So yeah, that went about the way I anticipated it, to be absolutely honest with you. We've got roughly 60% of the people saying, 58 to be exact, that more leads would have definitely helped them. and 13% saying more time would have been better. And then 29% are kind of going towards resources. And like I said, it's worded a little differently in the poll. With resources, I was kind of, just throwing the general blanket around thing, whether it's product offering or technology or things of that nature. But definitely it looks like leads, surprisingly and overwhelmingly, is the one that we're all looking for more than anything, which makes sense because, if you've got more people to sell to, you can sell more products when it's all said and done. And so how do you stay organized in all this chaos, right? We're kind of talking about how busy the fourth quarter is and how everything can really spiral out of control in a moment's notice. So if you've, again, attended any of my webinars in the past, this is going to look very familiar. And for me, it's just a cadence. It's a way to stay organized. It's a way to stay focused. And it's just a way that you can follow up with your clients in a timely fashion. Day one, call and leave a voicemail and send an email. So we've kind of hit them a couple of times there. And again, these are folks that maybe we're cold calling, reaching out to. Maybe they're people that have reached out to us and we're just trying to kind of pick up the conversation again. Maybe it's somebody that we talked to last June and they said, hey, you know what? Give me a call when we get closer to the open enrollment period. So again, first and foremost, just kind of, if you don't get a hold of them, definitely leave a voicemail and send an email. Wait a day and then follow up with another email. Wait another day, and now we call again and leave a voice message. And the most important part of this is we're not calling necessarily to say, hey, do you want to buy from us? We're calling to talk about that email that we sent. And that email could be something along the lines of, if it's critical illness, maybe you found a great article talking about life insurance and critical illness. If it's dental, maybe you found a great article talking about dental. If it's short term, maybe you found an article that talks, why short term is so important. If it's Medicare supplements, maybe you found something talking about, how much money a supplement can save you over the life of the plan. But ultimately something directed at the customer, so that when you call them up, you have a legitimate reason for getting a hold of them, not simply if they answer going, so do you want to move forward? Just, hey, I'm just calling to see if you got my last email. It's a lot warmer as far as an introduction is concerned. And so then we're going to send another email. And here again, we've waited a day. It's up to you if you want to send emails and make phone calls on the weekends. I know that in the business world, the most lucrative time to send an email is Sunday night between the hours of roughly 4 and 7. Because the idea is those get opened with pretty good frequency. And then finally, we're gonna finish out the cadence, and we're gonna talk about one more call and a voicemail if we don't get a hold of them, and then just kind of maybe one more email saying, hey, you know what, I'm sorry we're not able to connect. Maybe I'll follow up with you in a month and kind of see where you're at. And again, staying organized in the chaos, this is what's going to help you. I think back to when I was an outside salesperson, the first 90 days that I did it, I'd never done anything where I was going to be out on my own, really not having any sort of mentorship, any sort of real leadership. And for the first 90 days, I really felt like I was just kind of a dog chasing my own tail. I jumped out of bed every morning. I left my house about 7 o'clock. And I wanted to hit up, the places that opened early. So auto shops and dentists and things like that. And then I'd come back home after a long day. I'd spend from 7 in the morning till probably 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the field. And then I'd come back and I'd get up and I'd start all over the next morning. And after about 3 months of that, I realized that I was just putting too much effort and not enough thought into it. And so it was when I really stepped back and I would take, from the hours of 4 to 5 every night, I would plan tomorrow. What am I going to do tomorrow? And then I would start to plan, who are the most important people that I need to get hold of tomorrow? So if tomorrow spirals out of control, at the very least, I can get the 3 most important things taken care of. And this is all, again, the way that you're just going to kind of stay organized in the chaos. So, if you don't have a calendar system or at least some way of checking off a list and organizing things, I strongly recommend that be one of the first things that you get taken care of. Kind of changing gears, and now I'm not talking so much about the OEP and AEP in the fourth quarter of last year. We're going to talk about 2020. I can't believe that January is almost over, and I can't believe that January has taken this long. It was about the 15th, and I thought, wow, January's cruising along pretty good here, and now it's the 30th, and it feels like it should be February or March. So one of the tools that we are distributing, however, is the phone prospecting checklist. And in an effort to save time, I'm not going to go over every aspect of the phone prospecting checklist, but I am definitely going to kind of talk about a couple of the things on there. What I feel are maybe the 2 that you can put into action right away if you're not currently doing it and see the biggest response. And that's going to be voicemails and goals. Just plain and simple. So, I get asked all the time, why on earth do you leave voicemails? I talk to a lot of people who choose not to for one reason or another, and they always say, well, nobody returns my calls anyway, so I just don't leave a voicemail. And I can tell you with 100% accuracy, I've never returned a phone call that a message hasn't been left. So you're guaranteeing yourself that you're not going to get a response if you don't leave a voicemail. But more importantly, the voicemail is a venue for you to let the customer hear your voice. So all of a sudden now they understand that you're a professional, that you're somebody that's reaching out, and they kind of just warm up to you a little bit. I know it sounds weird. You're not really eliciting a response. You're just trying to kind of warm up to them a little bit. And then secondarily, it separates you as a professional. When you leave a really, really concise, a really brief, well thought out voicemail, it all of a sudden separates you from somebody who's just like, I'm Tim with ABC Insurance, give me a call back, versus, hey, this is Tim with ABC Insurance. I'm sorry I missed you. I'm just following up based on the conversation that we had with X, Y, and Z. If you have a chance to return my call, I can be reached at. And now all of a sudden it feels like, somebody who's got their business under control, somebody who's going to essentially help them kind of through the minefield that is insurance. So the keys to a successful voicemail, I think there's really three. First and foremost, write it out. I don't care how long you've been in the sales business. It definitely helps to write it out and think about what you're going to say. So, again, following a script. And then the trick there is writing a script that sounds like you, so it doesn't sound like you're reading from a script. Secondarily, we want to time it. The most effective voicemails are all between 20 and 30 seconds. I think we can all agree nobody likes getting onto a voicemail and listening to 3 minutes of rambling with a phone number peppered in there that might or might not be important. So definitely time it in a real world setting. And lastly, and most importantly, practice it out loud. Again, it's one thing to say, well, I'm just going to practice. I'm going to make 32 calls today, so I'll definitely get some practice at it. But the last thing you want to do is burn through the first 5 to 7 calls and kind of trip over your words. It's the oldest adage. I learned it when I was taking all my communications classes once upon a time. Stand in front of a mirror and practice it out loud. It sounds very antiquated, but I promise, it's going to help you in the long run. Goals. The second part of this kind of conversation, one of the things that I did is I called and I talked to insurance agents when I was selling Quoted. And, in our first conversation, I always asked, what sort of goals do you have? What were your goals when you got into this? And, I can tell you with probably about 75 to 80% accuracy, all I got was, well, I just need to make enough money to make my car payment, to pay rent, to pay my mortgage, to make sure that my kids can eat, all those sorts of things. But there was nothing that was really quantifiable. I didn't have somebody come over the top and go, my first objective was to get to 100 customers or clients. And then my second objective was to get to 500 policies. I never heard anybody talk in those sorts of terms. So goals are important for a couple of reasons. They act as waypoints. So all of a sudden it kind of dictates, well, if my overall goal is I want to get to 1,000 customers, and I've been doing this for 3 years, and I'm at 300, that means that I'm adding, give or take, 100 a year. So it's going to take me another 7 years to get there. Now, if you're comfortable with that sort of growth in that time frame, everything's going to work just fine. And again, that's another point where, as a waypoint, you can kind of judge, hey, do I want to try to expedite this? Do I want to try to speed this up? And then you can kind of dissect and figure out what's going to need to happen for you to speed that up. Secondarily, keeps you focused day to day. So if you've got a goal that you want to hit, something that at the end of the year, well, you can't exactly, stop for 3 or 4 days and then pick it back up and hope that everything is going to work the way that it did before. The number one alliteration I use here is kind of like brushing your teeth. Hopefully you're brushing your teeth once a day, twice a day. I'm sure dentists would be more apt to agree with twice a day. But the lowest common denominator is if something happens and you skip the day brushing your teeth, the world is not going to come to an end. But skipping 2 days, skipping 3 days, how many days can you skip before there starts to be some damage? And that's kind of the same thing with goals. If a day gets kind of out of the way and maybe, you had some duties with children or a spouse or just other things come up, that happens. But it's really important to go, okay, there was one kind of little blurb on the radar. Now I need to jump back in and refocus and look at these goals. And then lastly, make sure that you're setting short and long-term goals. Anybody who's ever entered into a diet, if you say, hey, I want to lose 100 pounds, that's pretty unrealistic, and then all of a sudden you just feel like you're kind of failing because it doesn't feel like you're getting close to there. So, maybe you start with 10 pounds and then I want to get to 15. And then now before you know it, you're at 100, which would be your long-term goal in this particular scenario. So again, just some reasons to set goals. So here we're going to talk about now some keys to setting goals. First and foremost, they have to be specific. Again, I talked to a lot of folks, and it was always pretty much the same. Is I need to have enough money to pay my mortgage, need to have enough money to pay my rent. Well, maybe you sit back and you go, okay, I've been doing this for 3 years and I've got 150 clients. My objective for this year is I want to grow 120 clients this year, and that's going to break down to 10 a month. So there we go. We've got our short and our long-term goal, and now we're going to sit and figure out, how we're going to get that goal achieved. So now again, a specific time. So in this particular example, again, we've got a monthly and we've got a yearly goal. If you wanted to break it down on a weekly basis, you could even do that and say basically, hey, you know what? I need to add, give or take, 4 customers a week in order to achieve my goal at the end of the year. Again, write it down. That was one of the reasons I had you guys hopefully try to get out a pen and paper at the very beginning and start writing some of these things down just to kind of get in the habit of it. I don't know if you're like me at all, but there have been times where I start going through some old paperwork and I see some things that I wrote maybe 3 or 4 months ago and I go, you know what, that was really good. I need to get back on that. So having it written down somewhere and having it somewhere where it's, on the forefront is going to definitely help your goals and help you realize them, most importantly. And then, develop a plan. So, again, if your objective is I want to grow, 10 customers a month, 120 by the end of the year, you can't just go, well, I hope my phone rings. It's, what, maybe I'm going to try a different lead source, or maybe I'm going to try a different marketing tool. But again, something that's going to help you achieve that goal. And maybe it's just simply, I'm going to put some more man hours into this thing. Maybe it's, hey, instead of working, 5 to 7 hours a day, I'm going to really buckle down and I'm going to do 7 to 9 to get me where I need to be at the end of the year. And that leads nicely into kind of, you must decide the price you're willing to pay. I've never met a really successful person who prides themselves in taking 8 to 10 hours a day doing literally nothing. So, at the end of the day, if you want to be successful, there is a certain amount of kind of elbow grease that you're going to have to put into it. And then lastly, you're going to have to think about your goals on a daily basis. So again, this is the same scenario that if I write a goal down, all these New Year's resolutions that I'm sure a lot of people have already fallen off on, you decide you want to do something January 1st, you don't write it down, you don't think about it on a daily basis. By the time February 1st rolls around, that New Year's resolution is just kind of a distant memory. But if you've written it down, if you've thought about it every single day, if you really sat down and put a plan together and looked at how you're going to achieve this goal, I promise you're far more likely to stick to it. And even if you don't get there, again, I keep using this same goal over and over again just because the mathematics work out really nicely. I wanted to add 120 people in 2020, and I get to the end of the year, and you know what? I added 98. Well, I'll tell you what, that's probably more than I would have added if I didn't have a goal. But now I can kind of go back through the course of the year and look and see, all right, where were those extra, give or take, 22 folks that I missed? So now next year my goal is going to be to actually hit the 120, and maybe you overshoot it. Maybe, holy smokes, this works so well. Now all of a sudden I ended up wanting 120. I got 170. Well, okay, is my goal next year going to be 170, or do I set it at 120 and again try to show reasonable growth? It just gives you a lot of options at the end of the day. And this kind of leads again, a goal without a plan is merely a wish. And it's one of my absolute favorite quotes I've ever heard in my entire life. Going back to the brushing your teeth. If your overall objective is, I want to have bright, shiny, white teeth by the end of the year, but then you just don't brush your teeth, don't give them any attention, clearly it's not going to happen. And then that brings us into kind of 3 things here, which are process, performance, and outcome. So at the end of the day, I feel like, as agents or as salespeople in general, we can control the process and the performance. With maybe your process is prospecting, maybe your process is your pitch and all that sort of stuff. Performance, again, how much work you're willing to put into it. Again, how concise you have your pitches down, things of that nature. Those 2 things you can control. At the end of the day, you can't make somebody buy something. But if you have a concise and a good process and your performance is high, the lowest common denominator is your outcome is going to increase. So again, control your controllables is going to definitely help you ultimately increase your sales, your customers, again, whatever your overall goal is at the end of the day. So, kind of changing gears here a little bit. Now we're going to talk about client onboarding. And if you had to ask me the three most important reasons to onboard, it goes like this. It goes customer service, and the third one, you guessed it, is customer service. While client onboarding definitely helps an agent a whole bunch, it really makes the customer experience that much better. And for that reason, again, I really point out that customer service is at the root of our client onboarding. So exactly what do you mean by onboarding? Well, what I mean by that is we're going to grab some information when we first meet and we first sign up a customer or a client. So again, back to the scenario, I wanted to grow by 120 folks, and whether I'm doing Medicare or whether I'm doing ACA or under 65 stuff, I've got a client that I'm going to meet with. Go over the presentation. They love it. They're going to buy it. So what do I do now? Obviously, I'm going to sell them the policy, but what else do I want to have for my records for that customer? Well, first and foremost, I hope you got a name and an address. I think that would be first of all. You probably got that through the application process, so I hope you have that stored somewhere. Dates of birth are going to be very important. As people age into Medicare, if you're an agent that does both, that's clearly going to help you out, so that some of those folks that age into Medicare, you don't end up losing them. I joke with agents that do both. I joke all the time, and I say, why would you put all that effort in selling the stuff that's a lot of work, and it's a lot of the compensation isn't necessarily as nice as we hoped, and then you let them go when the really the advantageous plans, I guess, that they can purchase come around. Well, you don't want to lose that person. Email. I highly recommend getting everybody's email, because obviously you're going to email them some information in regards to their policy. But more importantly, think about this. I personally was thinking about this as I was writing this or putting this little presentation together. I have a total of 7 emails, and I don't think that's all that different for most people that are out there. I think most people have between 3 and as many as maybe 10 or 11 different emails when you stop and think, I've got one for cable, I've got one for work, I've got a Gmail, but most importantly, I've got that one email address that's the important stuff. Like my auto insurance is located in that important email address. All of the documentation as far as my rental agreement and everything that pertains to where I live is tied to that one email address. And I think it would be the same for somebody who signs up for health insurance. They're going to give you the email address that's tied to their phone that they check, and not on a daily basis, but on an hourly basis. So think about how important that is to have the email address that they're the most used to checking. And if you've developed a relationship with your customers, when they see an email come from you, they know that it's something that they should open. It's not spam. It's not something that's junk. It's not garbage. It's something that's coming from my agent, and it might have to do with a pertinent thing about my policy or something that's coming up, things of that nature. So again, it just gives you a lifeline or a way to kind of contact your customers, stay in contact with them all year long. Notes. I know this is probably the one that you don't think of when you think of onboarding, but if you were onboarding a customer and you maybe talked about this plan or a different plan, or there was something that was really, really important to them, or there was something that they didn't want to ever hear about ever again. And I know we're using some extremes here, but it's a great place to put those notes in there. So that way, as we talk to them down the road, maybe they told us that I don't want to hear about vision. I don't need vision. My eyes are perfect. Cool. I'll put that in my notes so that as we kind of move down the field, I can make sure not to talk about vision, or maybe they're just have an apprehension to various types of insurance. Anyways, it keeps you organized, and it allows you to talk about things again in future conversations. If they say that they were going to a wedding, or if they were going to a graduation party or anything like that, when you talk to them 6 or 8 months down the road, it's a great starting point. How was your vacation? How was the graduation? How was the wedding? And all of a sudden they become just enamored with the fact that you have 500 customers, but you remember that they were going to their daughter's wedding the last time that you talked. And then last but not least, medications and current plans. So this kind of ties back to your email a little bit, because so if we're doing Medicare, we want to find out, or we want to know the medications that they've got, because that's just going to help at renewal. It's going to make it again seem like you care. But for all of them, we want to know what kind of current plans they have, because now that you've got this really solid gold email address that they're going to open with pretty good propensity, we want to be able to cross-sell. And so understanding what they have right now and cross-selling the correct products is going to get you a much, much higher success rate. So, if if I send a whole bunch of emails to a customer that's already got dental insurance about dental insurance, it kind of makes it seem like maybe I'm not on the top of my game. I really don't have it fully figured out. I don't really know the business as well as I should. But if I look in my notes and we were kind of talking about term life or talking about life in general, life insurance that is, and it's something that that person was relatively interested in, it might be a great thing to kind of throw them in the drip marketing loop and even introduce it. Hey, we talked about this the last time. I just wanted to forward some additional information. And again, this is the email address that they're used to opening. They're used to you as their agent. It's got a lot higher probability to be opened, and at that point, a much higher probability to be converted. So we've talked about it a little bit, but why onboard? I talked about emails. Again, now you can start sending out holiday and birthday emails. I recommend that you try to stay in touch with your customers a minimum of 4 times a year, once a quarter. So clearly you can send a birthday email. Who doesn't love getting wished happy birthday on your birthday? But you can use some of the lesser holidays, Halloween, St. Patrick's Day, any of these sort of holidays that kind of give you an opportunity just to reach out. Hey, I'm still your agent. I'm still here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And again, I think it makes for a very, very easy client experience. Retention and referrals. This one's giant. All of a sudden, you stop and think, well, looks like we're getting some noise from somebody here. Anyhow, well, we'll just kind of, I don't know who's not muted, but I apologize for the noise in the background. Retention and referrals. Essentially, this is going to help you out a bunch because, again, you onboard. I feel like customers buy from people who they like to buy from. So think about this. Imagine one of your customers has a question on one of their policies. They call you up. You've got it all in a nice, neat package. You can grab it right there while you're on the phone with them. It's not, hey, you know what? I'm going to call you back in 2 or 3 hours when I get to my office or when I get in front of my computer. You can make that customer experience very, very clean, very, very neat. And again, it's gonna lead to retention because those customers are gonna come back to you. But more importantly, people love to talk about things that go well. I can tell you stories, from the gym or from the coffee shop or wherever it is, even at work. Anytime I have a good experience, I'm going to tell 3 or 4 people about it. And especially in the health insurance world, you find a good agent, and again, people love to talk about it. Cross-selling. Again, we talked about the emails. We talked about writing down what they had and what they have maybe need. It's going to help you with cross-selling. And again, the onboarding is going to help you in a couple of ways because it's going to make you seem more professional. They're going to get much more used to you over the first year, 2, 3 years. And now they're much more receptive to listening to cross-selling because they trust you. So, maybe you had that customer that initially they were just pretty staunch. All they wanted was a Medicare Advantage plan, or all they wanted was basic health insurance and a dental. And now they've been with you for 2 or 3 years. And you kind of get in their ear the next time you're going to renew that, I know that in the past you've been a little opposed to life insurance or critical illness insurance or any of those other sort of ancillary products. But you know what? If you've got 10 or 15 minutes, I'd just really like to show you maybe how they can benefit you. Again, somebody who's been with you 3 years and had numerous great experiences is far more likely to listen to that conversation than somebody who has had no interaction with their agent over the last 5 to 7 years. And then lastly, it's just professionalism. The bottom line is it's going to make you seem like a more professional agent. And again, I always reiterate, tell your customers this is your full-time job. This is what I do. I can help you better than just about anybody, or especially somebody who's doing this on the side, things like that. And so when you have a really concise amount of information about a person and you can walk them through this process, it just makes it seem professional, and it kind of puts a bow on the last thing, which is, stop and think, would you buy from you? If the way your customers interact with you, would you stick with somebody who did it in that capacity? And I think ultimately we all just want a good customer experience because the bottom line is you can buy insurance in a lot of places, especially if you're new to an area and you just moved and you type up Medicare insurance near me or health insurance near me, any of that sort of stuff, you're going to have no shortage of people to find. The trick is once they find you to keep those customers. So I see we have some questions here. Kind of looking around here. So what we'll do is we'll kind of save the questions all the way to the end. For any of you that would like, what we're going to do is kind of show some information about the Quotient product here. So we talked a little bit kind of about some various things. I'm going to show you maybe how these are going to help you out, or how these can be remedied using the Quotient platform. So bear with me for 1 second here. All right, so here we go. This is our Quote It platform for any of you who have not used it. This is our home screen. So ultimately, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go in, like we're going to run a new quote, and I'm just going to use, I don't know if anybody here is an Abe or a Simpsons fan, but I'm going to use Abe Simpson. And he is going to be in my zip code, which is up here in the Pacific Northwest, Portland, a suburb of Portland, Oregon. And we'll make him born in 1950. So here we go. 3 things. We can go ahead and create our contact. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now we have all of our information on a single page, which is one of the things I love about our platform the most. But to run a new proposal, I'm just going to come up here and run a new proposal. And let's say we wanted to look at Medicare Advantage plans. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now in 10 to 15 seconds, I can get a hold of the Medicare Advantage plans in the area. I have all of the formulary information available at my fingertips here. So again, I don't have to go back to the carrier sites and grab all this information. It's all available again at my fingertips. We get all this information a minimum of 60 days in advance. So the beautiful thing about this is you can be assured whatever you're showing your customers, you can essentially just know that it's the most up-to-date, most recent piece of information. So again, if we've got a customer that really wants to eye the fine print, we can go ahead and grab all of that stuff. So, I'm not a licensed Medicare agent, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a few of these plans and assume that, again, a customer kind of wanted to eye up the differences between them. And so there we go. And so now I'm going to go ahead and create a proposal. And I can even view it and kind of get an idea what the customer is going to see. Now I have a couple different options at this point in time. I can go ahead and email them just kind of that 30,000 foot view of things, which we're waiting for Acrobat to open here. So again, this is a really handy little piece of information because it just kind of gives the quick hits, right? Here's the real basics of the plan, kind of gives you an understanding how they're going to stack up one to the next. But more importantly, if I wanted to go ahead and send the actual plan detail for all the plans, I can do that as well. So, here we go. This is going to actually put together the entire plan detail for all of those plans. So the customer has 31 pages of information if they want to dive in. And I can tell you first and foremost, my dad retired, became eligible for Medicare, and he's got nothing but time, and he's a fine print guy. And so I applaud whoever signed him up because I guarantee you there were a lot of calls and a lot of back and forth about how does this pertain, how does this work, and so on. So what we'll do here now is we'll just go ahead and email it. I can go ahead and put in the customer's email. And then I'm just going to put test in the body, but you can actually create a predisposition message that'll show up every single time if you want. So here we go. It's going to the customer. I'm copied in on this email. And then here's my subject line. So if I just wanted to put in here, I can do that. And that's essentially what the customer is going to see in their subject line. Now we go ahead and send that message, and away we go. So now in regards to onboarding, I'm going to show you a couple of things that, again, are really going to help above and beyond just quoting. So, here we've got all the information about our customer. If I wanted to go in here and update, an email address, I can put that in here really easily. If there was a secondary contact, so if we're dealing with a husband and wife situation, I can go ahead and put the wife in here, or the significant other, whatever that might be. If I wanted to start putting in some home phone numbers, some work phone numbers, a street address, all that sort of stuff I can gather very, very easily. Here, we can send out holiday and birthday, what we call autoresponders, so essentially emails. Pretty simple process to put together, but essentially I can turn them all on or off right here. Without kind of inundating you too much with the quoted stuff, what I wanted to really get to is one of our newer features. So again, this is going to pertain specifically to our Medicare customers, but what we can actually do is we can look up doctors, pharmacies, and prescriptions for this customer in their zip code. So I did a little bit of homework here. We're going to look up doctors, and we'll try the last name, Kemp. We search, and there we go. Judith Kemp is a family medicine doctor. They both look to be similar. I just want to verify, hey, which address do you see your doctor at? Well, it's the Cornell Road address. So we'll go ahead and add that one here. And now we'll save that. That's going to follow the customer around. Now we're going to look at pharmacies. There's a lot of different pharmacies, but where do you prefer to go get your medication? Well, I'm a big fan of Costco. Whoop. So we'll go ahead and use Costco. There they are. Is it the one on 48th? It absolutely is. So we'll go ahead and add them. And then last but not least, we can start to enter in the prescription so that we can remember exactly what our customers are taking yearly. As people age, it's just a fact that they start taking more and more medications. And so at the end of the day, having all of this information is very helpful, especially when, none of these are easy names. It's not Advil. The one that comes to mind is lisinopril. Now you can see here, we've got a type ahead feature. So again, you don't have to know exactly how to spell it. You just need to know the first 2 or 3 letters of it. I'm going to go ahead and use the 30 milligram, the generic. Go ahead and take that one and now save. Whoop. We'll add it and then we'll save it. So now here you go. For somebody who is, again, Medicare aged, their doctor, their pharmacy, and their prescriptions are very, very important to them. In our onboarding process, we can go ahead and grab this information up front. But now next year, when it's time to renew the plan, or if we want to go look for different plans or whatever that might be, instead of starting from scratch and going, hey, who is your doctor? Where's your pharmacy and what sort of medications are you taking? You can sit down in a very easy capacity and go, hey, so, the doctor we talked about last time was Judith Kemp. Are you still seeing that doctor? Are there any other specialists we need to add? No. Okay. Well, the last time we talked, Costco was your primary prescription destination. Is that still the case? Absolutely. Okay, cool. And then the last time we talked, lisinopril 30 milligram oral tab, that was the one that you were taking. Are there any other medications that we need to look at? Yeah, you know what? My doctor prescribed a blood pressure medication. Cool. So instead of having, again, to start from the very beginning about what's your doctor, what's your pharmacy, what's your medication, we're just kind of recapping a little bit and essentially helping them make the process that much easier. And again, these are all things that are going to correlate to a customer thinking essentially that you really are on top of your game and you've got all of the answers kind of figured out. So again, there's a lot more stuff that I could technically show you in here, but I'll kind of leave that just from a timing perspective to our quoted agents if you want to learn any more about that, which segues very nicely into the last.